Welcome back to the Bioactive Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Riley Kirk, and today I am co-hosted with Dr. Miyabe Shields. For anybody who doesn't know, Dr. Shields and I co-founded a research and education nonprofit that is focused on cannabis, but also other medicinal plants. It's called NAP, or the Network of Applied Pharmacognosy. And pharmacognosy essentially just means natural products. So during these episodes that we call nap time, we're discussing some current projects we have going on that you can take part in, some of the previous research that we've taken and what the data is from that research, and just some upcoming events like Las Vegas, which is just in a couple weeks. So first, starting with an opportunity that you can take part in right now, is we are currently doing research on two other medicinal plants, Kava and Kratom. You may have heard of them. They're very popular, and there's a lot of supplements out that utilize Kava and Kratom. Kava contains these medicinal compounds called kavalactones. And kavalactones are best known for helping with stress and anxiety because they do have activity on our GABAergic system in our body. But one of these kavalactones, called yanganin, also has activity on the same receptor that THC binds to, which is the CB1 receptor, which is pretty cool. Kratom contains different active molecules that are actually opioid molecules. They are in a complex formulation instead of an isolated opioid, which are usually the products that are commonly abused. And two of the main opioids are mitragynine and 11-hydroxymitragynine. Because Kratom contains opioids, it's thought to be good for pain and even recovering from addiction of other types of opioids. But of course, if you're currently struggling or have in the past, I would check with your doctor or just avoid the study. So if you do want to take part in the study, you click the link in the show notes. We're going to then ask you a few questions. Over the next few days, you're just going to answer some baseline questions without taking the product. Then we will send it to you, tell you what dose to take. You'll start taking the product, continue answering questions every day. So that way we can compare your days that you were using the product versus not using the product. I just got my products yesterday, so I am actually really enjoying the study so far. I hope that you do it with me. I'm in the mood or quality of life cohort. At MJBiz, in just a couple of weeks, we're also going to be launching two more studies. One of them, we're going to be comparing freeze-dried cannabis to traditionally hang-dried cannabis. And another one is we are testing a product called Miyabe to see if it can help remove the high when you feel too high from consuming cannabis. So Miyabe contains a molecule called THCV, which actually acts in the opposite way of THC. So it's thought to help reverse those effects. Really stoked to get data on that product, because if Miyabe works as well as we're hoping it does, this could be really big for advocacy and the movement moving forward towards legalization across the nation. It's essentially an Uno reverse card, and we've needed it for a long time. Make sure you're signed up for NAP's email list, which is also in the show notes, to be up to date on all of the studies that we're doing and how to be the first to find out about them to participate in them. Okay, we're also doing a giveaway this week. I'm going to be giving away 2 flour mill grinders. They're actually not grinders, they're mills, which is why they're called a flour mill. This is the product that I use every single day when I'm seshing. And what's really cool about it is, if you notice the top, there's no teeth in it. It's like a mill. So it's not like crushing your flour and like destroying all the trichomes. It's much more gentle. It doesn't look like it would work very well, but it is the most essential piece that I have in my rolling kit. So I want to give away a full-size one to one of the listeners, and one of these cute little mini ones, to another listener. All you have to do is, when I post my next Instagram on the Bioactive Podcast page, you just need to comment something that rhymes with mill. Now make sure you have something to drink or something to smoke, maybe both. Stretch your body as much as you can and just chill with us for the next hour or so. Welcome back to another episode of Nap Time, and this time we are going to talk about a recent conference that we just got back from, which was NECAN New York. And we went to NECAN Boston this year. I went to NECAN Vermont, and this was our first time in New York for NECAN, because their industry is just exploding right now because they recently legalized in New York. So a bunch of people are moving, a bunch of people from the West Coast want to get involved in the East Coast, and we just wanted to see what the scene was like and what kind of people we could connect with there. So
yeah, Syracuse, I think this was the first year for this conference, and you never know what to expect, but I just want to say that I was blown away by upstate New York's medical advocacy scene.
Yeah, people were amazing there.
Yes, and that's like my takeaway from that experience was like, okay, like the proportion of people that I had really significant conversations with, and part of that has to do with when we talk, like what our subject matter of our panel, we gave a keynote panel on Friday that we're going to talk more about in a little bit, but the subject of that was that stoners are subject matter experts and how we aren't valued medically and in the research. And so all the conversations that came after that just, so significant. And it's one of the ways which we get to define our research going forward with the community, which is just, it's been a really special experience to be able to go and be with so many people in the community, hear their feedback, and apply it. We're going to do things differently.
That's the coolest part of what we do is this is like the third time I think we've spoke on this with this Weird Brains crew. And after we talk, every time we're just like swarmed with people who immediately are telling us these like inner depths of their experiences and their souls, which normally would take quite a long time to get to that point of comfortability. But after we are vulnerable on stage and after we are like representing weird people in the industry, people just immediately want to share with us. And it's like one of the most special things that I think none of us anticipated going into Weird Brains, but has been one of the most impactful things coming out of it.
There's no number that we could put, there's no quantity that we could put on that feeling of significance of exchange that you have with someone else when you see them and when they see you. And when there's this bond that is formed that comes from being able to be in the same community. And this is something for research that we both feel like, even though you can't put a number on something, that doesn't mean that it's insignificant. Oftentimes it's the opposite.
Yeah. And the panel was moderated by Catherine Sidman, who is such a good moderator, and she's just so good at like aiming specific questions at certain people to like really bring out their expertise. So I wanted to give Kat a shout out there. But as Miyabe was saying, the topic of the panel was stoners as subject matter experts, and some of the things we were talking about were maybe some non-traditional ways of interviewing people and gaining that knowledge from people. So for instance, if you're a company interviewing for a bud tender, maybe the expertise that's on their resume isn't always the most relevant expertise, working at Target, working at Walmart, working as whatever. Maybe it's more important to ask, have you ever grown cannabis? What's your favorite strain you ever smoked? How do you evaluate the quality of cannabis? These questions that are most relevant for that bud tender position. And same thing with many other positions that exist in the cannabis industry. We got to think outside the box into what makes somebody an expert in cannabis and how can we learn to gauge that properly.
We absolutely have to reevaluate who knows what about cannabis and what value we are putting on the different things that we do and don't know. Because the lived experience of using cannabis is never going to be replaceable by reading anything in a book. And yes, it is important for there to be experience and knowledge and skills that are gained in other ways besides smoking weed, for sure. There is also a separate knowledge set that comes from the experience of having a relationship with the cannabis plant. Many of us for years and years and years of our lives. And we gain this knowledge together. We gain it on our own. We gain these insights. And actually, I want to invite everyone who's listening to do a part of what Kat opened our panel with, where she said, I'm going to say a word and you're going to say words back that you think of. So we'll play it. We'll give you a moment. And then, Riley, why don't you tell me the first word you thought of? But the first word is expert.
Are we giving a moment? We'll give a moment.
Yes.
And the audience did a great job on this, by the way. I thought
there was. Let's tell them some of them, yeah, because they were good. I feel like one of them was smart for that one.
Yeah, one of them was smart. One of them was like specialty, knowledge.
And then the next question was, what do you think of when you think of scientist? I think my favorite one of this one, because in my brain I was like stoner, but that's just because we've been
I think that might be the minority in this.
I know, but like we've been making merch and stuff, so like, and I mean, it's like my brain was like
low-key plug for our merch. Check out the links in our bio.
I feel like it was the thing. What was it? Analytical.
Analytical was one. Smart, they said again.
Yeah.
And then I think the third one was stoner that they brought up, right?
Yes.
And that one got more interesting ones like lazy.
Creative was what was listed. That was a positive one.
I think that was mine. I think I was the one who said that during the panel. That's so funny. Yeah, there were some good ones, but it was a really good exercise. And Kat does this at every event that we've been to. She starts by like probing the audience and essentially asking like, could you be having biases that you don't even know you have just based on how you associate certain words with these terms? And it was a really good start to the conversation. One, to just get people thinking about that. And two, to make people comfortable just like raising their hand and speaking up during the panel. Because we really like to make panels much more inclusive with the audience than maybe more traditional panels. Like, we're here to learn from you as much as you're here to learn from us. So we want to make it a comfortable environment where people feel comfortable just like interrupting, asking questions, walking up to us and after or before, So that was cool.
Yeah, I think that the flow of when we're talking with this group, and this is our science advocacy project for this year. And one of the things that we try and get to, and there's a flow with educating, there's a flow with a performance, really, and hitting home certain parts that are important and complementing each other in hitting those parts. And I feel really proud of the panel that we put together, and I feel really proud of what we said during that time, because I think we made a very compelling argument for stoners having subject matter expertise that you cannot get any other way than being part of this community.
Yeah. And part of that was just like, if you were new to cannabis and you were looking for a way to understand what consumption method you want to use or what strain or what dose, you can ask, like, would you ask a college professor who taught cannabis or the stoner who's been using cannabis for 40 years? I would go to the stoner every single day because, as Miyabe said, a lot of times in academic settings specifically, people haven't even used cannabis and they're teaching about cannabis. And that there's value in looking at it from that perspective, but there's much more realistic value in looking at it from the perspective of somebody who has not only been dosing themselves and becoming an expert on themselves, but also hanging out with other members of the community and other growers, extractors, whatever it is. There's so much hidden knowledge within the industry that just hasn't been respected in traditional settings of learning.
And this brings me to a conversation that happened after that panel. We had these long conversations and multiple conversations over the weekend and over the rest of that day about the value of the information in the legacy and our value that we put on it. We value it, and it is something important and critical that we need to lift up, and we need to document in a different way, or it could be documented in oral tradition. I was saying that the legacy information is very oral tradition. It's very instructor and disciple. It's very master to Padawan. Like there's a lot of oral tradition, and that is actually the route of information for humans. That's the more common route for us to, like, as a community, exchange knowledge is through stories and parables and direct examples and direct assistance and mentorship. And I think that one of the things that was really cool about being in Syracuse and seeing that they have a really strong foundation of growers. They have a really strong foundation of people who value the plant and have been valuing it before we were doing things like lab testing for potency and trying to match a market that is uneducated, because all the markets open uneducated for the most part, because all of us have been blocked from this education and intentionally brainwashed by our school systems. So when the dispensaries open, whenever a market, an adult use market, comes online, we're for the most part going to a completely uneducated audience.
Well, and kind of what you're talking about of having a mentor and a mentee in the legacy market, a lot of that does come from trust. It's not like you can just say, hey, we're having a class 10 to 4, come learn how to make hash. Like, we have not been able to do that for a really long time. So you had to really vet people, and you had to really make sure you trusted them with that knowledge to use it for the right reasons, and to respect the plant and the industry. So I think it's cool, what we're doing, and we're developing this trust that both legacy people as well as the new consumers feel as if they can trust us with this knowledge, because we're not going to do anything to disrespect the plant or the people involved in cannabis. And I think that's really special.
Yeah, I think that like our intention with what would be the best case scenario would be to take this information and preserve it in such a way that it is reproducible so that we don't lose the knowledge, because that is what science papers, that's what they aim to do, is to be able to describe something so that someone else could reproduce it, and that knowledge is not lost ever because it's documented in like a very specific way.
Even though 60% of research is not reproducible.
Good PSA. And that like a good number of the big publications are under I think they're under a lawsuit for, I think the lawsuit is for monopoly, but there's been 30,000 there's been 30,000 retractions of papers this year so far, or something like that. I saw I was at a conference on real world evidence, and it was a really great speaker, and she was saying that part of her thing was that, especially as AI ramps up and especially as writing is getting offset more and more on computational simulated intelligence, that we are going to see more and more, or we're likely to see more and more papers get redacted in the future. And we're going to have to be way more critical about what it is we're reading and what the source is. And I think that's another piece that we would like to contribute to as an independent research organization, is to publish things that people can read, to do it faster in a more relevant time frame for our industry, and to be transparent about the entire process of us doing it, all the way towards what we're saying, that every time we present our data, we get feedback.
Yeah. So we did collect some data at NECAN Syracuse as well. We had a booth there, which was always really fun to booth, but it is exhausting on your voice and your throat. We didn't have a microphone for our keynote of Weird Brains, so we had to like scream and like project our voice, and then we had to booth right after it. So just my voice was destroyed after that weekend, but it's okay. But we did have a booth, and we were collecting data in person where there's 3 different color strings, and we did this in Boston too. People can grab a string that corresponds to their age, and then we ask a series of questions, like starting with your gender, and then do you work in the industry? What's your favorite type of product? What time do you start consuming? How many times do you consume a week? And your favorite flavor profile. And then we collect that, and then we analyze it by literally taking apart the string and documenting the data. And we're going to be presenting that data in Vegas, because we are hosting a series of events in Vegas, which will end this podcast with talking about what those events are. But it's really cool seeing how stoked people are to participate in research, even if it's putting a string around a few nails. Like, people are like, thank you for asking our opinion. Thank you for including us in this research. And we are like actually doing research. Like, we are going to write this up into a white paper about the demographics of people that go to conferences. And it's just, it's cool to be able to be that liaison between research and include as many people as possible. And we're also going to talk about one other research study that we did at NECAN Syracuse as well.
Yeah, the fact that there's trends that were general from Boston to Syracuse, we haven't analyzed all of Syracuse's data, but you can see it visually when you look at the chart, which is also very cool. We can report on trends in real time, and this is so beneficial for so many different reasons. And if it took us 2 to 3 years to publish this data, it would just no longer be relevant whatsoever. We need to get this type of information out quickly, because it's only going to be useful for maybe 6 months to a year, to maybe 2 years. But the markets move extremely quickly, and we have to be able to start looking at different ways of research that address this. So I thought it was interesting that a majority of people were in the industry, and that a majority of the people in the industry are daily consumers.
Flower, I think consumers. Mm-hmm. Flower is king, let me tell you. Everybody loves flower.
Everybody loves flower. And to me, what that indicates as a percentage-wise is that our industry, at least the people who attend the conferences, in general, has a way higher percentage of daily consumers, has a way higher percentage of people who prefer flower, has a way higher percentage of medical patients who have and need consistent dose scheduling and typically higher doses than what would be the average cannabis consumer. And if you compare this to the general population, we have a new analysis of a CDC data set, the National Survey on Drugs and Health from 2022. And from that general data set, there were 47,100 adults in it. And daily consumers made up about 5%. People who consumed cannabis, like 6 out of 7 days was the criteria I used. But daily consumers who use cannabis and who are also neurodivergent are about half of that. And we have it somewhat aligns with our longitudinal data set. So all of our data sets are starting to align. Basically, we have these separate population-based data sets, but the percentages make a lot of sense when you are looking at these separate data sets side by side. And this is really important for us to be able to identify ourselves as a community, to be able to know that we exist, to be able to feel that we're empowered. And what you were saying about people coming up and being so amped to participate,
so
and like
amped.
that energy. And the pharmaceutical world is eyeing us at that conference that I was at, that was pharmaceutical, for real world evidence. I mean, people had a different opinion of cannabis than I've ever seen in a pharmaceutical space. And they were blown away by our community. They were blown away by how dedicated you all are, by how educated you all are. When I was telling people, I was like, yeah, like our audience loves biochemistry. Like, our audience is nerdy and very engaged in health in a way that I think more people should be. That's my...
Well, it's not random. They've been waiting for this data and this information and this science for so long, and literally nobody has been providing it because it's always been so stigmatized and so difficult to research, and we haven't had researchers who were the actual consumers who are able to do that relevant research. So when we finally prioritize not just engaging the community, but also like sharing back the information to the community and showing how important they are for what we're doing, I mean, that's, I think, the value right there. It's not us versus them. It's like us together. Like, we're trying to gather this data together to better our understanding, not just of cannabis, but of our own bodies and of our own brains too. And so many people seek answers as to like, why does cannabis work for my OCD? Why does cannabis work for my depression, but it doesn't work for this person's, conditions? And then sometimes we have answers to that and sometimes we don't. But just having a resource to ask those questions to, I think people have been waiting for that for a really, really long time.
It's so empowering for me every time we come to these events. Every time, it is really intense, and social settings like that are really intense, and we do a good job, I think, of managing, like, so that we have breaks and are able to chill and make sure we smoke. Smoking is mandatory.
It's also the best networking. Anyone who goes to weed events, definitely go smoke outside.
100%. And like,
oh wait, I was gonna bring up the drone thing. Should I?
Wait? Yeah, no. That's a good set. Oh my god, you have to. I don't know if everyone else is gonna feel this is funny, but I feel like I'm gonna pee my pants every time I think about.
I sometimes just watch this video in bed and just like die laughing. It's so funny. Okay, so Melissa, Millennial Stoner, you might follow her on TikTok or Instagram.
Shout out.
She brought a drone to this conference, which is so sick. Like, she was taking these really cool videos of us in the Airbnb, like smoking, doing our wake and bake, and just like, drones are cool. They are. And so she brought it to the conference to take like an aerial shot of everyone seshing outside, which is dope. So she goes to set up her drone, and I'll drop this video like in the video on YouTube, but she puts her drone down, and this guy immediately like goes to grab the drone and move it, and he
picks it up,
and her face just like turns like so serious, and I think she said, was it quote, "Don't touch my shit," when she looked up. "Don't touch my shit, dude." And then he like said something back to her, and then she said, "I'm sorry to yell at you, but like, maybe you shouldn't touch people's shit." And I just happened to be recording because I was like, cool, drone, like, I'm going to take a video of this. And I just happened to get this hilarious interaction between Mel and this dude. And just, like, the way her face changes so quickly. And it's just so funny.
Girl, I'm just bad girl.
Please don't touch my shit. Sorry to yell at you, but like maybe a good idea not to touch other people's shit.
It was really funny. And I feel like it was also one of those things where it's like, you know, like our community, our cannabis community, we are so, I'm just going to say it. I think the cannabis community is very neurodivergent. I love that about us. It's something that I am only interested in interfacing with neurodivergent people at this point in my life. Just because, generally speaking, I don't align almost at all with someone who is more typical and has typical outlooks on, like, priorities of things. And I think cannabis is a gateway into that. And the time that we spent, like, hanging and chilling, and the time that we spend with our collaborators in the industry, smoking, seshing up, having really deep conversations, really deep conversations about the trajectory of this medicine, about the history, our own personal histories that we bring to the table, that we educate each other about at these sessions. Like, that transfer of knowledge is so valuable. And it was really cool. Mel is a content creator, and it was really cool. We all made some content together, and like we were just talking about like dose schedules and dosings for the conference, because I am extremely intentional. We had some long days that
you did great. I'm not as intentional, but I will say not all the time. It's just, you know, like I just need THC most of the time. Like that's my accommodation. But I thought it was really cool. I started to get a migraine at NECAN on the second day, and I was like, oh my God, I kind of feel like shit, and I have to talk to like a billion people. And lately, GMO flower has just been like vibing with my brain so well when I had a migraine. I actually spoke about this on the last podcast episode, how GMO specifically gets rid of my migraines. No other variety has been really helping. So I just started looking for GMO. I'd ask people like, yo, you have any GMO flower? And they'd be like, I don't know if I do, but I'll go find you some. Or like this other guy we met from California, he's like, you know what? And he reaches in his bag, pulls out like a 2-gram joint of GMO flower.
Huge!
And it was rolled like perfectly. It was like a little like angel joint. And I was like, I can have this? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, hope it helps. And I was like, I love this community. Like, and it literally helped my migraine. Like, I felt better after. And like, that's community medicine. I didn't bring GMO, but somebody else did. And that was cool.
I have a video of you, and of you with that joint that will drop in, because it also tasted incredible.
I first rolled up a haze, and then I was about to smoke it, but then I started to get a migraine, and GMO helps with my migraine, so I asked a few people, and then I got this wonderful giant joint. It's a great joint, yeah. That was a 10 out of 10.
Like the thicker a roll, there's something in there with diameter for sure. With
well,
like diameter,
you know, even just the
temperature.
paper to flower ratio is like completely different with larger rolls, so it makes sense a little bit.
But
there.
speaking of those differences, one of the things we did do after the first day of NECAN was our puff topography measurement, which is puff topography is the flow rate. And so do you want to explain the beginning of why we're doing it? Because we don't know what it is.
So it started with the phase 1 of Science of Smokability, where we are doing the initial experiments. We're running a smoking machine, which is like the size of a toaster oven, and you put joints in it, and you program it to like take a puff at a certain time, exhale at a certain time, etc. So as we're running these experiments, we were looking at it and like, that's not how we smoke weed. That is not how people smoke weed. So that method that we had been using for phase 1 of Science of Smokability was designed after cigarette smokers, not joint smokers or cannabis smokers. So immediately we were kind of like, we need to reprioritize immediately making a new method that's more in line with cannabis consumers, because we're so early in Science of Smokability that if we can make this modification now, then the rest of our experiments are going to be way more relevant for cannabis consumers. I mean, the length of how long you pull, the duration between pulls, that literally alters the chemistry. If you're taking a longer pull, you're letting that ember heat up more, and that heat is going to cause different chemistry to happen. And again, if you're like leaving more time between puffs, it's going to cool down more between puffs. So this is like really, really important, not just for like, you know, my own ego being like, I want this to be as close to a cannabis consumer as possible, but also like from a chemistry standpoint, it literally matters. So now we're kind of in phase like 1.5 of Science of Smokability, where we're like, okay, we're now doing something called discovering puff topography to understand what an average puff profile looks like from a joint.
Seems like there's a few different types too, just general. Like, yes, everyone converges on an average, but it does seem like there are big anomalies outside of that average. And we're probably going to make some merch for people like the Dank Duchess is a double puffer, and the Trace looks different.
Lungs.
And
she's
then
both.
hash lungs. Dank Duchess has both. Yeah, we're going to make her.
She's got some
her
lungs
own shirt.
on her. Holy, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Man.
Also, just quick shout out to. Quick shout out to CBG Gurus because I am smoking some CBG flower, vaping actually, mixed in with Alien Labs flower because Alien Labs flower is so strong that I like to cut it with CBG flower. So, small little shout out.
When I cut CBG with THC flower, it is so stimulating to me. That's what I was doing at the conference. When I get that 1-to-1 cut, that's like, yeah, that's a lot of stimulation, and it's all I need for sure. I mean, I like caffeine too, but what was I saying? Oh, so about the different puff topographies. So it's important because that's the volume that we take in. So the flow rate, the amount of time, and then how much we're drawing. When you look at the puff, it's like a trace. It'll look like it looks like an HPLC for people who are familiar with what that looks like. It's just it's a bunch of mountains, like a bunch of peaks. And if you calculate the area underneath that, then you get the volume. And the different volumes that we take in, those are different doses. So between me and it was either Ashley or Dr. Allison Justice, I don't know who, but between me and them, in general, the volume I took in was greater. So each one of my doses is going to be greater because each time that I'm smoking it, I'm taking in a larger volume, I'm taking in more molecules, and that's absorbing and going straight to my brain. And we are just at the beginning of understanding this. And it's not only going to help our research because our studies will be more replicable, but then it's going to help inform tons of other people. And eventually we are going to go on to continue to do this with more than just joints because it's different in every single scenario. And we don't have a good repository information right now publicly on the differences between all of these different things, like especially variability. I think one of the biggest variability is carts. I think that has some of the largest variation in, and a piece of that has to do with like the material, the temperature, like there's so many differences in
right,
the way
or even just what you were talking about, just like joints versus bongs versus bowls, or even the material they're made out of. Like, why is silicone so terrible? I should really stop hating on silicone so much, but they are cat proof, but like I really think they're like the harshest hitting pieces you can possibly smoke out of.
Yeah, I'm leaning away from things that aren't like glass and even metal,
Paper.
But like metal related. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's like, not to say that, listen, I've smoked out of like beer
Literal
cans,
Poland
gross
Spring bottles, yeah.
Literally disgusting ass beer can. Like, let me think what else. There's been some bad,
When was the last year you smoked out of a bottle or a can?
A can? Oh, a bottle? A bottle's an easy one. It was last year. Because what? I had to make a grab bong.
Oh,
so I used a plastic like Nantucket.
Oh, this is a really good intro conversation into the sketchy vape that we've been vaping on.
God.
Because Miyabe and I are very educated in cannabis, and we're always talking about how important it is to like know the source of where you're getting your stuff from and how it's made and all that stuff. And we have been loving a vape that we just found out was made from a solvent that we were not really comfortable with. So I think it's worth bringing up on this episode because like we didn't know, and we were just going off of feel, which it felt really good. It was like one of the smoothest vapes. It was nice.
Tastes good.
Yeah, but it was extracted really with tetrafluoroethane. And the only thing that scares me about that is that it has an F in it. It has a fluorine in it. And I really don't love messing with fluorine because it is just... that molecule, once it sticks to something organic, it's not going to unstick from it. Just like these polyfluorinated molecules that we see all the time that are causing these damages to our body, the forever chemicals, the PFAS, PFOA, fluorine scares the shit out of me. And I don't even like it being involved in extraction at all. So yeah, we've been using a vape that was extracted that way. It's likely safe, but we don't know. And like,
I don't think that we would have. I just don't think that we would have like. I don't know that I would have like consented to trying it. Although I liked the effects. I liked the way it tasted. Like absolutely, and I think it's interesting. And I'm interested in the fact that it was noticeably different for me. And in terms of fluorinated compounds, like just quickly going back to what you're saying about fluorine, if you look at the periodic table of elements, because everyone remembers when you were in high school, there's that like chart, and hydrogen's on the left. Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah.
Hold on. Get it out for.
Keep going.
Yeah, get it out. Get it out for the video people. But yes, so you on the periodic table of elements, on the very left, you've got metals. You have like hydrogen is on the left too. Hydrogen gas, but then there's metals like sodium, potassium, la la la, and then as you go from left to right, they change. And actually, most of the organic molecules that are in our bodies are on the right hand side. They're in the top right specifically. So in the top right section of there, you'll have carbon, you'll have oxygen, you'll have nitrogen, and you'll have sulfur. Chons are so carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen. They're all in kind of the right upper area, except for hydrogen. But the other ones are all in this upper right area that Riley's showing you right there. And as you go left to right, they get more and more stronger ability to pull electrons and to strip electrons off of other things. Now, fluorine is all the way to the right. It's what's called a halogen. If you've heard of halogenated lights, that's the same thing. Like halogens are basically the most reactive things on that side of the table, and on the left side it's the alkali stuff, right? So on the halogens are very, very reactive. They want to strip that electron. They want that electron so bad, and that's part of why they have such strong interactions with stuff in our bodies, because our bodies are mostly made with chons, and chons are to the left of that halogen and don't have as strong of pulls on electrons. And some of the halogenated compounds that I can describe for you, I'm fairly sure zolpidem or Ambien is halogenated. I know the benzodiazepines are. So
it's very common in pharmaceuticals.
Yep.
I'm not
very common.
And again, it's not like everything with a fluorine is bad by any means. But I just don't like to put in my body if I don't have to. Like in this case, I don't have to. I have many other vapes not extracted with fluorine.
Yeah, I think it's the component of it that not that I take issue with, but that interests me because of efficacy, and the fact that there's increased efficacy in some ways is something worth looking into.
Oh, wait, I did read about it on the Future 4200 forum.
Oh, nice.
Because, so this is how it happened. He DM'd me and he was like, great to see you at NECAN. And I was like, great to see you too. Like, love snagging a vape or something like that. I don't know. And he's like, yeah, you should research what makes our vape so special. We extract with this solvent. And I was like, oh. So I immediately went to the Future 4200 forum, and what I read mostly is that it's really good at extracting excess fats and lipids. But that's pretty much all I read. So then I messaged Kat and Dustin, and I was like, hi, do you guys know anything about this? And they essentially said that like it's a very uncommon solvent to use. Its safety is kind of unknown. They don't recommend it.
The thing I'm thinking about that interests me about it, is that it is a compound that's used in the laboratory for it. This is something that it has been suggested to me that I use to dilute some of the terps, because I'm having solubility issues with some of them. I need to get them to higher concentrations to like saturate out my curves, and like it was suggested to me that I use this because it dissolves. So in the research world, it's known to dissolve. It's known to be very, very good at solubilizing, at getting things into solution. I don't know anything about its reactivity. I know that it's reactive, like flammable. Like that's like, most things. But it would be interesting to study. I do think that like we do need more public resources on very temperature-specific interactions of solvents and solvent-based extraction. I also think on the flip side that...
Wait, is this even part of what's tested for residual solvents? I'm going to look in...
I don't know.
In Massachusetts. It's not required. That's interesting. Yeah. Well,
it is extremely volatile. Volatile meaning that like it evaporates like crazy fast. That's part of what makes it
a
dangerous.
Good solvent, typically, if we're thinking about cannabis extraction. Yeah. No, it would be interesting to look into further. Like, it very well might be safe. Like, it really might be. I'm not trying to, like, hex this solvent. But I just wish I like knew about it, because usually I do at least inquire about it, but I don't know. We just didn't. And we met him first at MJ Unpacked, but who knows? Anyway.
Yeah.
Ask questions about your products.
And I mean, like, yeah, okay, we'll move on from it, because I think that I don't want to get down the rabbit hole on testing and the thoughts on testing, because there's so much there, like, on a national scale that's going on with testing that, like, it's like, even if we tried to cover it, like, at all, it would take us way too long to even cover what we think are, like, the main problems, let alone what are problems. Well, it's also
hard because all we do is yap about the problems, but, like...
I feel like it would be really beneficial if it was mandated that people have in-house. And then it would be hard. One of the things that I find hard about that is that would be requiring people to raise huge funds and hire scientists and stuff. And right now the industry doesn't have the funding for it. And so on one hand, I'm saying that I think ideally, let's say this, if money was not an issue and if this wasn't going to affect anyone in that way, then I think that what would solve it would be for every single place to have in-house. Because then they're forced to disclose more than one report. And even if it's true that you
it's just like cross-checking everyone all the time. You want to hear my nasty truth of how I think it's resolved?
What?
Automation.
Yeah.
Stop letting humans touch shit if we want it to be reproducible and if we want it to be non-counterfeit. But
in that case, it has to be automated straight to a public resource or a repository.
Or just to something that can't be manipulated after the fact. I mean, if we look at the natural product research that's happening at a federal, national level, like government natural product research, humans don't touch anything. I mean, a robot goes and gets the sample. It's already pre-diluted by a robot. It grabs a certain amount. It does the assay. And then it, like, spits out a number. Because they're testing hundreds of thousands of different fractions and extracts. It's, like, all automated. It's insane. And, like, why can't we do that with cannabis? The infrastructure's already there. Pharma's using it. The government's using it for their research. Like, we could implement way more automation. And I hesitate saying this because everyone's like, AI and stuff, robots are going to take over humans. And it's like, yeah, low-key, yeah, they're like really accurate and consistent.
Well,
and sometimes we need that. How are we going to make a fully automated testing laboratory when testing labs are like going under all the time because they can barely stay afloat?
It's definitely a benefit to them. Reproducibility, unbiased, data taking. And we should actually talk to Natal at some point from Sorting Robotics. He's an engineer who helped do a robot that's on Mars with NASA and now makes robots for the industry, like a bunch of different robots. And
that's like a kid's dream job.
And I feel like when we were talking at the Boston Freedom Rally, we had never met before. We had like met online. It's actually really cool. We went to UC Davis at the same time. Isn't that
kind of crazy?
Random. I also went to UC Davis. Yes.
Cool.
And then, at least I think so. I'm assuming so. And then also Mallory, who's with our nonprofit admin, was also at Davis at the same time. I just feel like that's such a small world.
That is.
But so when we were at the talk, I didn't really know what Natal's take was going to be on, the robotics and AI, and we were talking about like potential and all of these things. And one of the things he said really stuck with me was about how robotics can help make people feel safer in this industry for that reason that you just brought up. That it can be used as advocacy in states that are still not having medical access. It's like if they were available and if they were affordable and accessible, which like that's its own, those are their own issues. Because like the reason why the labs are using human labor and don't have robots is because the robots are really expensive.
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical ones, and we don't have the funding in the industry. We don't even have the ability to bank safely. Right. How can we be expected to build? No, I mean like seriously, if we can't operate on getting business loans, if we can't operate on how are we building our industry? We're building it entirely on the will of a few rich people. And it's something that is affecting every single piece of the industry from plant touching to ancillary, right? Like, and it's a huge issue. And the solution of being able to get that level there will help in places where you see people who are doubting the science, because you won't have situations like this arise. It won't happen. Or if it does happen,
you can check back and see exactly how everything was done. I mean, the trail of
evidence,
yes. Evidence of that information would be absolutely clear and traceable.
I mean, it's so frustrating because as a scientist, like, the science is so valuable. The labs and the amount of work that they do and the amount of different types of tests that they are expected to do, it's a lot. That's a lot of different things.
But at the same time, like, some of the results we've gotten back for some of the things we've submitted, like, have been actually concerning. Like,
that's true.
Like, levels of magnitude different between the same sample submitted twice. That's a problem.
I also think that, like, another one of these issues is that cannabis is such a unique form factor. There's a ton of variability and there's a ton of biases in even how we sample. So, like, another one of the issues is just the sampling. And even though the states can try to have regulations on, like, how many samples you have per amount of flower that are taken from where, I would love to do a study on the amount of, like, I would love to do a study on one plant, 20 different flowers.
Oh, that would be really cool.
One plant.
Also, we should talk about some of the studies we're doing in Vegas too, or what we're doing in Vegas. I think it's a good
let's do that
transition. Yeah. So Vegas is going to be dope AF. We have so many cool things planned. Starting Tuesday, it's Associations Day. It's NAP's first time at MJBiz for Associations Day, which is the day for, is it specifically nonprofits and investors? Like, it's really like trying to set up companies that are doing altruistic work with the right people who could potentially help fund and sponsor it, which I think's amazing.
And I am so excited to go to that. This year, it's going to be our 1 year anniversary, because even though, actually, it was about a year ago right now that we're recording this, that we launched our longitudinal study. We weren't really public about what we were doing or talking to other people or making connections again until last year there. So
at MJBiz.
It's kind of a really cool, like, cumulative look on, you know, our first 12 months, which have been insane, but also amazing. And, like, huge shout out to everyone who's supported us. Like, we've had some amazing support from our community, amazing support from business owners in the industry, craft producers, single sourcers. Like, it's been everyone that has shown up for us, and we needed it. And we needed it, and we're appreciate it.
We're literally afloat from community donations and involvement. Like, absolutely unreal. So what we're doing at MJBiz is we actually are making a magazine that is going to be kind of a synopsis of what we've done this year as a nonprofit, and we're planning on doing this hopefully every year at MJBiz. We're going to have a magazine. So it's going to talk about our scientific advisory board. It's going to talk about the longitudinal study. It's going to talk about science of smokability, weird brains, a recap of our financial situation, because we want to be as transparent as possible. Is there anything else in there, Miyabe, that I forgot?
I'm sure that there's some other stuff that we're including in there, because we made a whole outline this morning about it, and I feel like there's a couple more. But the gist of it is that we're gonna, and we're giving these out at a half-day science event that is hosted by Planet 13, GLG, and the Beer Bros.
Planet 13 is the largest dispensary in the United States, and
definitely in Vegas. I don't know if it's in the US.
It's huge, and we got a stage for 4 hours,
and that's the stage that they use for MMA fighters and stuff when they come to.
So a bunch Vegas, of our collaborators are going to be up there talking about what they do. We're going to be kind of moderating it, and then we're going to be collecting data too. Yeah,
I am stoked for that. We're going to do some peer-to-peer networking. Oh, so this last time when we went to a women's networking event in Cannabis, hosted by the Cannadiva. Shout out Tanya Osborne. And when we were there were these 2 short 4-minute, 20-second speed networking parts. It was a small component, and it was there was a little bit of organic networking and letting it happen naturally, and then there was an announcement okay, we're gonna do 2 sessions for 4 minutes and 20 seconds, turn to the first person you see who you don't know, or maybe 2 people, have a conversation and get to know each other, get to know what you do in the industry, and then switch and do that again with another group. And
it was sweet. It was sweet. I really enjoyed the people I talked. There was also a dab bar there. highly recommend that paired with networking. That was amazing.
I really thought that was great, and it's something that we would love to do. And the people who are going to come to our section of Planet 13 are going to be all, there's a niche here of like really educated, really engaged people who want to do good things in the industry. And I want to keep connecting people who are wanting to do good things. Like, that's kind of one of my favorite things that I ever see sometimes is like, I'll see someone post something on Instagram that was like in one of my courses or has come to an event and met us in person. And then I'll see other people that are part of our network, like liking and engaging with it and making comments. And I'm sort of like, yes, like so this is it. Like, we are only going to make it together. We were always only going to make it together. The battle has only just begun. And like, I feel empowered by that. So I'm really excited for everyone who is going to be in Vegas. It's Wednesday in the afternoon, 2 to 6 p.m. And then we're going to be doing some data collection afterwards as well at a social consumption lounge that's there at Planet 13. I think it's called Dazed. And that happens right afterwards. And we don't have the links for those yet, but when we do, we could drop them.
We might by the time this airs in like 2 weeks. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we have the links. But yeah, I feel like it's really going to be a culmination of like the efforts that we've made about, doing this from the perspective of the community. And it has been really interesting and really validating to have gone to so many different places and hear that feedback and then be able to report it. So we're going to have some data that is shared inside there that we've been sharing. If you haven't seen us speak this year, we're also going to be publishing this online. And our panels are going to be live streamed. So our panels will be on NAP's YouTube. And we're going to have, so if you're not around, but if you're not going to make it to Vegas, but you're really interested in hearing about real world evidence, the science of smokability, our science advocacy.
And we'll try to get somebody to like moderate so that you can ask us questions too. Even if you're not present, we can ask a couple online community questions.
And I believe that YouTube records the comments in the live. So if you are on YouTube and leaving a comment and we don't get to it in the actual panel sessions because scheduling always ends up getting tight. If that's true, then we'll definitely jump back on. Like, we'll look through these, jump back on. And, I think that it makes sense for us to get together with every one of these panels that we're moderating to have a follow-up panel next year that's just online. Have one that's specific to answering those questions that were specific to that panel. We could bring in our collaborators who have their own experiences and expertise that, adds to what we're doing and very much so enables us to branch out.
Yeah. I also the evolution of our accommodations during these journeys has been absolutely amazing. And what I mean by that is Miyabe and I have been like giving talks, doing research, traveling for a few years together. And
3.5.
And we have stayed in some sketchy ass places because we have been not wealthy for a long time. Not saying we are now.
Our lives?
Yeah. So just going from like Airbnbs where you had to like literally share like a space with other people that you didn't know to Nikan, Syracuse, where we had this gorgeous home at Beacon Skiff, which is like a apple orchard / venue. It was just gorgeous. And like I finally felt like this was like a very transformative experience because we've really been through the whole spectrum of like working our way up to this, and it feels good.
We are 100% trash pandas.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
like
also we do what it takes. Like, we just do what it takes. We're not going to say no because we don't have, a 5-star hotel. We're just going to make it work, and we do. And
if anyone's listening in the future, we require a 5-star.
But yeah, it was like a really good experience in Syracuse to like have that kind of sanctuary to go back to after such a crazy day, and being able to like chill with Mel and Kate and just like smoke and vibe and eat good food and get DoorDash 3 times
in the middle of the night. Like random stuff. I I think that like when I think back to when we first started working together versus now and where both of us were in those times too, I think it's a really cool evolution to see how in many ways what NAP has done in this last year has been a scaling of what was all of our initial interests when we started working together. Our work we originally started working together. We were going to publish a theory together, which we're still working on. I feel like
we haven't even published the theory, which is so funny. We've published so many other things.
So many other things that it's like the thing that we decided to start working on together. But we weren't ready. It's still not done. And who knows, maybe there's data currently being processed that I know that it is.
Well, we also are working on the theory, but we're almost like working on the supporting evidence for a theory, which is cool. I also think we're about to release another actual theory paper, and then I have a few more that I want to write, and I think it'd be really cool to like get Nat more into just writing like perspective theory pieces and just seeing how it goes.
So for everyone who's not familiar with the academic peer-reviewed scientific literature publishing culture, I'm just going to give a crash course on who is allowed to give a peer-reviewed opinion or perspective, because every single one of those pieces that you read in a scientific article was directly requested from one of the editors to someone specific that they know or that someone else working for the journal knows, that they request them to write that perspective or opinion. It is actually not likely, not saying it's impossible, but it's not likely for people to be able to publish peer-reviewed perspectives or opinions or theories in the peer review if they have no real cred. And what I mean what about real cred is that the types of credibility that we hold is in the community. The types of information and value that we bring is in the real world lived experience. And our perspectives and our theories on the biochemistry that we both have our PhDs in is heavily, heavily informed by information that we would never have been able to gather otherwise. And that being said, it means that we have dedicated our lives to a different route of research and to a different way of doing things. And so we don't have the same connections to someone at Nature who's going to publish a journal about cannabis and is going to be like, hey, who would write a great perspective about the future of medicinal cannabis? It's going to be this person who's published 200 papers on it, right? And I'm not saying that person isn't a good person to write about cannabis. Anyone who's written 200 papers on cannabis knows a decent amount about it. But what I am saying is that they would never ask us, and therefore they would never get our type of opinion or our type of perspective. So we have to create a different way to get some of this information out there, because we do go way far away from what is the norm for pharmaceutical scientists. Like, if we were to be on a scale from 0 to radical, the most radical of pharmaceutical scientists, I think that we're very close to that edge of like very radical opinions for what our backgrounds are in biochemistry, and like in the healthcare world, really, because we're in healthcare kind of. Drug discovery is a component.
But nothing that we give is medical advice.
No, literally never anything. Great.
Always trying to plug that in there.
Great point. Yeah, doctors of philosophy, technically. Doctors of philosophical
well, it's kind of what Tina Gordon always talks about, too. It's like always viewing it from a capitalistic society perspective, which is not something I preach about a lot. But even like, we're not like trying to sell anything specifically. We're more trying to like empower people, which is not the route of what traditional academia, traditional pharmaceutical sciences, traditional, like any sort of what we're talking about in this world of wellness for a certain price. We're essentially trying to say you should absolutely grow your own cannabis, learn to extract it in different ways, and then learn to dose yourself, and then you're going to be in a better space.
I feel like you and I both align on this, not just with cannabis, but also with like food access and equitable access to like other aspects of our lives. And so it extends further than cannabis. But 100%, like, when you look at research and what drives research, what is the purpose of it? And like, why do we do it? Research has been, it has in the past been exploration. It has in the past been philosophical. Like, and I would say this is more like ancient times, right? And even
Darwinian
getting
times,
to like the 70s.
They were doing research because they saw a cool bird, and they were able to just pursue that because like there's so much exploration to do.
And the point of it, for me, I always believed that the point of science was to further the human experience. The point of science is to gain knowledge so that we could improve humanity and that we could make, and in my mind also that involves making humanity more equitable, like globally. That's a part of what I think science is meant to do. It's meant to improve our understanding of things so that we can improve the quality of life for everyone, for all humans. And I am incredibly wrong in believing that that's why. I mean, that was a huge thing for me to understand that. So you know how there's this joke that like autistic people don't get like certain things, like certain sarcasm or like whatever, like social things. So I had always thought that big pharma, this is no fucking joke. I thought that people said big pharma because their laboratories were big and they were legitimately big companies. Like I was just like, oh, it's big pharma because they have huge ass labs.
Yeah, like it's a really big pharmaceutical company.
Lots of people, like it's like thousands and thousands of people and billions of dollars. So big pharma, big everything. I never understood that there was a Big Brother reference in that same language. And coming to pharmaceuticals, understanding the profitability of them, understanding the resources. And I'm not saying that we're wasting them, but they're resources that we're dedicating that we know have a lower efficacy on return. We know that the amount of resources that we put into that, in comparison, if someone said I give you $2 billion, I could tell you exactly what I would do with it, and I think that we would have great medicine.
Oh, I think we could even understand what $1 billion is.
Me neither, but I know that we could do it with that. I know we could
allocate money and then have still like 1.5 billion left and be like, oh.
Yeah, I think we could do it. I think we could do it with less. I mean, in my opinion, like based on like what the cost was of setting up, like just generally, I think that we probably could do it $5 million for a year for 3 years, so we have a 3-year leadway. But it's like that's a lot of money. And I can't conceptualize even that money, but I do know how much some of the things we need cost. Like even just like getting the waste taken out of the lab space itself, like, the maintenance contracts on any sort of instrumentation that you get. It's expensive to do science, but that isn't even close. That $15 million over the course of 3 years is not even close to the $2 billion that we spend over the course of 5 or 6 years developing pharmaceuticals.
Which
so it's
I still don't get too. It's like, how is there still like an Adderall shortage? Like, how is that possible with the infrastructure of the pharmaceutical industry? Like that's there's definitely more behind stuff like that. But okay, we don't need to get into
We're like getting deep into the pharmaceutical stuff. Let's pull back.
Pull back. Oh no. How long have we been here? Okay. Anything else we want to say about Vegas before we wrap up this nap time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if anyone is interested in one of the things that we are actively seeking in Vegas for next year is that we are going to we are going to do public education campaigns. We're releasing our research, we're releasing our journals, and we're looking for annual sponsors who are wanting to be included in all of that. We're looking for people who see all the things that we're doing and are like, yes, I want my brand to be supporting a community event to educate people and do different types of experiments on Bubble. Yes, I want my community to be able to see me on a live stream online with guest specialists from the industry and from the legacy on specific things with like Ehlers-Danlos with cannabis and like narcolepsy with cannabis. Or yes, I want my brand to be featured and have its own blog where we break down very specifically what is the science that is interesting and that it pertains. Like, yeah, like all these things, like we're looking for brands who are really like actually aligned, and not just brands, people really. Honestly, people
it's all about the people. I mean, that's how brands find us, is certain people find us. People. And they're like, I'm going to start advocating for X brand to start working with you. Also, too,
and we're like, thanks.
We are going to be recruiting for a few new studies involving not just cannabis, but also other natural products like Kava and Kratom. So make sure you are signed up for NAP's email list, which I'll put the link in the show notes, but you will be the first to know about any recruitment that we're doing through the email list and then through socials after that. So make sure you sign up for the email list. We're going to be taking part in them as well. So they're really interesting products that we're going to get real world data on. So we'll tell you more about those towards Vegas time, but we have at least 3 new products that we're going to be seeking people to try out.
And it's going to be so interesting to see because we're going to be able to turn it around fairly quickly because as far as we know so far with the planning stage, none of these are going to peer review, which means that we're just going to be able to give you the information as soon as we have it. And we're really excited to start.
But we will we will write white papers about the data, telling you how we got participants, how we analyze the data, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yes, we're creating our own open access source of information that we're going to just put out there. And something already really cool has happened with our blog where one of our collaborators or another scientist in the field, rather, Dr. Jehan Marku, was giving a talk and was talking about CBG and was like, hey, I want to use the information that you put out there on your blog on CBG because there really isn't a lot of information out there at all. And what we have is minimal, but it's real.
And we published a paper on CBG and anxiety too. So we actually, NAP has published like the most CBG real world data, which is pretty amazing.
And that's crazy to think about. It's like, I think it's crazy to think about all the data sets we hold and all the information that we have. I mean, just think about our socials and the polling, all the screenshots I have of all the it's really fascinating because the ability to see a community is the ability to know what we need collectively. And we're not the best judges of that, just the two of us. We're not saying that. And that's why we go back to the community again and again and again and reassess and reevaluate what it is that we all want and need. So stoked about this because it's going to be really interesting. I know I'm interested to see where I lie.
Yeah.
Like I'm always interested in where I lie compared to others.
Yeah. I think, it's fun to see. It's fun to see your own data represented, too, like in any way, when you know you contributed to it.
And that's something, too, that is by the time that this airs, it's likely that we will be able to start telling people about personalized reports that we're launching with our software data partners where you can actually get that.
Yeah.
And this is something we'll cover. We probably should do an entire thing on it because I would love to educate medical doctors. But essentially, these reports are always going to be the same, but they're going to be your data. It's going to show the average, and then it's going to show where you are in comparison to the average, along with, like, did you experience reductions in anxiety? Did you experience reductions in pain? Did you sleep better? Did you have anxiety?
And how that corresponded with your dosing of the day. So then you can use that for your own personal medical advocacy, whether it's for your physician or for your parents, for your spouse, like whatever it is, to just have data to show that cannabis is, in fact, improving different components of your life.
And I think that it's because it's standardized. One of the things that we are excited to do is we'll create a podcast and a video where we're going to go through a sample report. We'll go through our own, right? We'll go through our own sample reports and point out what it is, the things that we think are important. And all of them are going to come with resources to scientific literature so that any doctor who wants to be educated of it can go straight to the science literature, can look at, can read what is the most recent publications. Because let me tell you, cannabis research also is ramping exponentially. It's like one last tangent before we wrap it up. But like the amount of research that's gone by, like I made that lecture for Ehlers-Danlos. And the last time that I've looked up Ehlers-Danlos in detail with the endocannabinoid system in cannabis was about 10 years ago. Because it was like 9 or 10 years ago that I realized I was hypermobile, or that I had there was a yoga instructor actually who told me like, hey, like your joints are unstable. And I was like, oh, did not know. I've just been injured my whole life, you know? And so I looked it up about 9 or 10 years ago. And 9 or 10 years ago, there was information on it where it was like very theoretical, very, very theoretical stuff. Like not any real human evidence, not any real molecular mechanism evidence that's directly linked. And when I looked it up to make this lecture, there were tons of papers that had come out within the last 10 years that are showing this. So like, this is where we're at. We're at a rapidly, exponentially accelerating phase of research. We know that it's valuable and important. And the bottleneck is communicating it to the general public and getting the general public's feedback on it so that we can accelerate it for everyone, because the faster we could figure all of this out, the better for everyone. And then through universal accessibility, the benefit for rec people. Yeah. For everyone.
And maybe what we'll do is after Vegas, we'll record a Vegas recap / personal report introduction. And that would be fun.
Nice.
I'm sure Vegas will be full of adventures. All right, cool. Well, I thought NECAN was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite conferences we've been to this year. So that was a fun recap. We're prepping for Vegas already. We're going to go. It's like coming right up. So the whole industry is low-key kind of stressing about it. But I think it's going to be
for sure
sick. So we'll keep you updated. But make sure you're following. I'll add all the socials below. Applied Pharmacognosy on YouTube and Instagram. Miyabe PhD on IG. And, stay up to date and sign up for our studies. Peace, love, 420.
Bye.
Love.